Good morrow, kind sirs and siresses, whatever time of day it is or whatever. I am going to read you a poem, and this poem it's all about the Battle of Coatham. And this is a battle that really did happen a long, long time ago, and I wasn't there, honestly. But anyway, this is the poem about it. It's called, strangely enough, The Battle of Coatham. I'll tell of the Battle of Coatham as happened a canny while back, after William the Conk started kinging, and Harold's men all got the sack. Now the northern lads were still feisty, and Bill being foreign and all, they didn't want him as their sovereign, but someone a little less tall. So Willie set out with his army to quell the rebellious lot, to sack and to rape and to pillage, and steal everything they'd got. But northern lads were quite canny. They'd played against Romans before, and although the Romans claimed victory, the northern lads called it a draw. So they set up a roadblock near Scarborough, with 12 oil drums and a tree. They dug great big holes round the edges, covered up like so no one could see. The Norman knights grinned and guffawed as they came on a tree in the road, but when 6 knights each side disappeared, their advancing was definitely slowed. "Hey up, you great Norman pillock," a voice called out from the blue. "Yes, you, the one with the crown on. Hey up, 'cause I'm talking to you. You can bugger off back with your army, or suffer ignoble defeat. And if you behave in bargain, you can come back for Durham big meat." William stood up in the stirrups, and turning a deep Norman red, said, "Right then, that's you for the chopper. Name and number, and quickly," he said. The voice called out loudly, "I'm Harold, and this here is Harold, me son. And me 2 nephews, Harold and Harold. We're all Harolds, every one. We're taking revenge for our cousin, though I can't quite remember his name. We're demanding a rematch of battle, but this time we want a home game. As to numbers, we aren't good at counting. It's you froggies that like doing sums. We counted to nearly 1,000, and that's when we ran out of thumbs. The Harolds pitched mud pies at Normans till they were all covered with clarts, and it stiffened the joints in their armour and bunged up the seeing out parts. The Normans all lifted their visor, but by then it had got far too late, 'cause the Harolds had all disappeared up the road at prodigious rate. Willie glared all around at his cohorts, with a dirty great clod on his nose. "Right, lads, we're off catching Harolds, just as soon as I've changed me wet clothes." They cleaned all the mud from their armour, and prepared to advance on their foe. Willie said, "Come on, lads, let's get 'em." But hang on, which way did they go? An observant young squire called Francois said, "Look, there's a manky old sock, and peeping out of the ankle, it looks like it is Redcar Rock." Bill said, "Right, we know where they're going. We can take up a rapid pursuit. So you lot get back on your chargers to Redcar and quite sweet the toot." But the Norman chargers were hefty, like Cleveland Bears or the like, while the Harolds were all on pit ponies, and that's faster than riding a bike. At Bulby they stopped on the cliff top, with some boulders to roll down the hill. They scattered the Normans like 10-pins, and made William feel rather ill. Bill roared at his scattered battalions. "Get up there and charge 'em," he yelled. "How much?" said a grinning young squire, 2 seconds before he was felled. The Harolds' defences at Saltburn had the Norman knights in a rage. They'd raise the halfpenny bridge toll to threepence, and none of 'em had any change. They hastened up Coast Road to Redcar, and gathered about on the prom. They looked high and low for the Harolds, but the Harolds, there they were, gone. A note sent to William's encampment said, "If you're still wanting a fight, We're waiting on marshes at Coatham. At Mungle Jungle, turn right. The Harolds had built up a stronghold, holding as strong as could be, out in the marshes at Coatham, on an island surrounded by sea. There were bogs at the rear and the entrance, and quagmires round at the sides. There was one skinny, twisting old footpath, and that one was gone at high tide. William sent his bold knights in formation, but the path was so bendy and thin that only the middle one got there. The ones either side just fell in. "Will they siege?" said Bill to his cohorts, but siege engines turned out no good, 'cause their wheels were too heavy for bog grass and went down to their axles in mud. The Harolds took up the offensive, popping up from the walls and the roof, eyeing oysters at Normans like frisbees, and other forms of abuse. One daft Norman knight put his head up, with his visor wide open, not shut. Copped a low-flying oyster in lug hole. He said, "How you that didn't half cut." Bill decided he must reconnoitre, and walked off somewhere to the west. But his great Norman wellies were slippy, and he fell in, right up to his chest. The Harolds all burst into laughter to see the king stuck in the poo. Willie yelled, "Get me out and I'll kill you." The Harolds said, "Cobblers to you." The Norman knights mithered at William how everything had gone wrong, and besides all the dents in their armour, the bog stuck to Bill made him pong. Willie said, "Right, I'm off home to London. I never thought north were much use, so I'm taking a downsizing option and selling the lot to de Bruce." That's why, when they came to write Doomsday, it stopped at the banks of the Tees, and why most of the natives of Coatham always do just whatever they please. Hope you enjoyed that little ditty. Good morrow, kind people, and thank you for watching this video. I am going to read another story from my book, which is called Good Gracious, which is available on Amazon. I've got to get that in, otherwise I'll never sell any. Right, this story is called The Arkengarth Miracle. Michael looked up as Debbie entered the office. "Thanks for coming, Debs. I've got a little job for you. It's a bit different, and you might need Willow and Bob with you." "A big job, then?" Debbie frowned. "Not really," said Michael, "but I think it needs your sort of touch and Willow's persuasion. It's a lost soul, or not exactly lost, but not listening to the summons. We need to sort it out for Peter's sake. You know he hates his books not balancing." "Oh," said Debbie, "I'll get hold of Bob and Willow, and we'll take a look. What's the location?" "Arkengarth Dale, a small holding near a village called War. It's completely cut off in winter and pretty isolated the rest of the year. The lady lived alone with her dogs and a few animals. She died a week ago, and Peter's got her as a no-show." "Arkengarth Dale's where Agnes's sister lives, isn't it? Have you told her? She might be able to help." "You're right about her sister, but Agnes is a bit busy, so I didn't want to bother her if we don't need to. Himself is going on holiday again next week, so Agnes will be standing in. If there's a problem we can ask, but have a look yourself first." Bob, Willow, and Debbie materialized in a small, neat farmyard. Chickens clucked contentedly in a small enclosure. A cow mooed at them from a paddock, and two border collies ran out from the shed past an old tractor. The dogs pulled up sharply at the sight of the strangers and looked towards the open door to the cottage. Debbie led the way indoors. A little old lady was sitting in an armchair looking towards the door. "Hello, Nora," said Debbie. "We've come to take you to heaven. Don't be afraid, we're here to help." "Thank you," said Nora, "but I can't leave just yet. It's the animals, they need me. even though I can't do anything anymore. That's a nuisance, you know, dear, not being able to bring the feed or open the gates." "How have you managed then?" asked Debbie. "The animals all look well fed and content." "Oh, that's down to these two," said Nora, pointing to the two dogs. "Bill and Ben have been marvellous. They've opened doors and gates, closed gates as well, and dragged the feed for the cow, the chickens, and the pigs. But we'll run out of things in a few days. There've been no visitors for weeks, and I don't quite know what to do." "Leave it to us," said Debbie. "I've got an idea. When did you last see the vicar?" "Reverend Bloom. He's down at Grinton at St. Andrew's. He doesn't come up here very often. It must have been Easter the last time I went down there." "Well, we'll go down there and stir his conscience and his memory a bit. But first we're escorting you to meet St. Peter and put his books right." The Reverend Bloom was tending his delphiniums when he suddenly thought of the more far-flung corners of his parish. "Old Mrs. Braithwaite," he thought. "I haven't seen her since Easter. I must pay her a visit. I've got a couple of hours before the Virgin comes to talk about the bins. I can go right now." 2 hours later, a small group of men, summoned by the vicar, stood in the farmyard. Tom Hennessy, who farmed next door, stood regarding the buildings and animals. "Well, I think it's a ruddy miracle, beg pardon, vicar, but it does look like these two dogs have run the place for a week on their own." "Doc says at least a week, and there's no one else been here. Aye, we've got a miracle on our hands." "Maybe, maybe not," said Alf Trimble. "But if you're right about the dogs, that's greatly done and no mistake." Tom turned to the vicar. "Well, Reverend, we know she left everything to the church, so I reckon it's on you to decide who looks after the dogs and other beasts. I'm handy, so I can keep an eye on it for a while. But how about this miracle? Do we tell the Darton and Stockton Times or the radio people?" Debbie silently crossed her fingers and thought hard at the vicar. "Thank you for your kindness, Tom," he said. "I'm of a mind, if you want them, to let you take the dogs, the chickens and the pigs. Alf, will you take the cow? Of course the farm will have to go on the market in the usual way. Now, as for the miracle, I think we should keep that to ourselves. We have to respect Nora's memory, and after all, we don't want Arkengarthdale overrun with reporters and camerons, do we?" Debbie breathed a sigh of relief, and Willow wagged her tail. Hope you enjoyed that, and don't forget, there's a book full of them, and it's available on Amazon.